Final play-in games tonight. Chicago, Miami, Minnesota, OKC. OKC is tough, man. I didn't think they were going to get past the Pels. It looks like OKC going to get that 8th spot, right? Like they're coming, right? I think we all see that. Pause. And then Chicago, I think this is it for Miami, right? It's time to retool, and we'll talk about trades in the offseason. But I thought here, as we await the big dance here Saturday, I'd do a mailbag. And I wanted to start off with Punky the Libra, aka Brubra, because he had asked me a question a couple days ago, and I was like, you know what? Let me answer that in a video. You know what? Let me just do a mailbag while we wait for the real playoffs to begin. I shouldn't say that though, because the play-in's been spectacular. I can't front, man. I think it's just been wonderfully executed by the NBA. But he asked me, do you think the Don Nelson era would have won a championship with this roster? If he had meaning like the dynasty, the core three, right? In one of these rosters along this 10-year run, I think Don would have got one. I think he would have, but I don't think that they would have necessarily had a dynasty, because Nelly was just a tinkerer, right? He tinkered too much. And I also think when you look at Steve Kerr, one of his strengths is his diplomacy and the way he's able to finesse relationships. And I mean that in a good way. Nelly certainly didn't do that, right? You talk about, like, could you imagine Nelly during the KD years and how that got kind of weird, right? I mean, his temperament, I don't think would have allowed for it to be as long of a run. But I think, like, in a vacuum in one season, I think Nelly could have got one with this roster. I think most good coaches could get one with the Splash Brothers and Draymond. But then if you're talking about that era, you're talking about the Cohan era too, right? He would have never paid for this type of roster. At Tech of Solo, aka Dub Nation, said, "You got us coming out of the King series. So do I. I believe the Lakers will beat the Grizzlies. How do you think we stack up against the Lakers' size, and in particular AD, since we lack size?" Never want to hear about lacking size, right, fellas? No. Honestly, it's a bad matchup, man. It's a bad matchup. If you've paid attention, really, in the LeBron, Anthony Davis era, like when they're both playing, it's just a tough matchup for us, right? What I would propose to you is, what are the chances Anthony Davis is whole headed into round 2? And I'm not trying to like jinx bro or nothing, but we all know the ongoing jokes, right? Street clothes. He already was holding the shoulder in that play-in game. LeBron played, what he played, like 45 minutes in that play-in game. You just imagine how physical this Memphis series, and it's not going to be a short one by any means, right? The whistle, it's just going to be a tough series. And so, the way I see it is, whoever comes out of that series is going to be leaking oil and have spent more gas than they would have wanted to in a first round matchup. Not to say that the Warriors are going to be in a cakewalk, but I don't think it's going to have that same type of physicality as that series. And so, yeah, the Lakers a healthy AD, I don't think we have an answer for him. What are the chances we see that as the playoffs move on? So Rare Fiend. Okay, I see you. You know what? That's a perfect time. Let me shout out today's sponsor, So Rare NBA, for sponsoring today's video and setting up the Athletic Alchemy Private League, where you can compete against me and others in the community to win prizes like tickets to games, autographed jerseys. It's the future of fantasy sport. Here's how it works, man. You get 20 common cards at sign up, and then you set your 5-man lineup. And it's kind of like those social media posts you see, $15 to build a lineup, right? Each player has a score, and your lineup has a cap. So you can't just build some super team. But here's the thing, your MVP, your best player in your lineup, that score doesn't count against your cap. But it's cool though, because it really becomes about finding the right role players and high value players. And hey, everybody seems to think they can do a better job than their squad's real GM. So let's see what you got. It's free. Click the link in the description and join the Athletic Alchemy League at So Rare NBA. At So Rare Fiend asked, what are your biggest storylines to watch in this postseason? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? For every fan base, their storyline's the most important. That's how stuff works, right? No, I would start in Philadelphia. James Harden, time is running out on, bro, right? And then Joel Embiid, he's going to win the MVP here. He's in his prime. Not sure how long Joel will be in his prime when you just look at his durability. Like, it's now or never with this team, the way it's constructed. And PJ Tuck, not that he's been a huge piece of that, but I think that they have the most pressure on them in the East. And I think that that's the most curious storyline. How is it? It's finals or bust for them, right? Philly fans, would you agree? Finals or bust. You don't got to win it all. You got to get there. You got to get out of the East. And then as far as the storylines in the West, I think I got to stick out here in the Valley, in the desert, in Phoenix. The Suns go all in for Durant. You see what Mikal Bridges is starting to turn into in Brooklyn. Chris Paul, on his last breath, is the point god. I know I'm upsetting Dub Nation when I say that. Is he going to finally get one? Right? And so I think the Suns are the second storyline, or the Western storyline, where it's just like no one's blaming them for the move, right? Everyone understands going in, and most people respect it. But at the same time, they gave up a lot, and they've tightened their window, right? And so I think that's the most interesting story. But that's what's so good about these playoffs. Like, there's storylines everywhere. Are the Kings for real? Is this really the end of the Dubs dynasty? Is it over for the Heat? Do they got to blow things back up, right? What about Boston, right? As young as they are, at a certain point here, the whispers of the Jalen and Jason duo, in Brown not really getting along with that fan base. If they fizzle out and don't come out of the East, there's a ton to be interested in. We're not short on stories in these playoffs, right? Palbino Talbot, probably butchering that. My bad, y'all. He said, do you think that this team currently is better and has more talent than last year's team? I think they have more talent. But I don't necessarily think they're better, right? Because last year's team, I think they were greater than the sum of their parts. They fit together. The roster was better balanced last year. But I mean, you look on paper, Kuminga's better this year, right? Poole, it's his second year going through the playoffs. You imagine he's going to be better. In a vacuum, Dante's a better player than Otto, right? And JaMychal Green, Bielitsa, that's debatable. Bielitsa was probably better last year than JaMychal has been. But the size and versatility that last year's roster provided, I think, made them overall a better team. Talent-wise, this team has more talent this year. I think I can say that. But to be fair, we have to watch this season's playoff run play out. By the end of it, maybe I'll feel differently. We have to give them an opportunity, but certainly there's been a lot more, issues during the season, right? The cohesion hasn't been there. Braden Merkel. If the Warriors postseason is a failure, what addition or subtraction of the roster should they focus on? Top trade, free agent targets, and whom is most likely to leave or be traded. And there were a few questions like this one. And so what I did was I just took the first 10 questions and I started there as far as picking and choosing. It falls in line with what I just talked about in the last question, right? They have to rebalance the roster. They've got to get more size. We know that issue, hey, it might show up in the Sacramento series, but at some point here in this playoff run, it's going to show up, right? And we talked about Wiseman. We beat that horse to death, and it's, I don't even want to get into Wiseman anymore, right? But it's that spot. It's not blaming Wiseman. It's in his development process. It's if they had moved off Wiseman last summer, right, you would imagine there would be another true center on the roster right now. And that is the issue. If we go back to back, how does that change things, right? And this, again, a lot of people had this question. We know the impending Draymond opt-in, opt-out thing here this summer. You look at the landscape of the league, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of landing spots for him, right? Logically, you'd say, well, he might opt in here, but then I think we have to factor in he is a Clutch client and how aggressive Clutch is and how many relationships they have throughout the league. So I imagine Draymond opts out. Now, whether we extend him or he goes and gets his money elsewhere, I can't call that, right? I think that may depend on the longevity of this playoff run. And, back, I'll put it to you like, I'll tell you what, if they go back to back, we get number 5. I think Draymond would be more likely to leave. I could be wrong. It's a tough call. It's a tough call. But yeah, we're going to have to develop the young guys. There's not a route to like truly reshuffling this roster. And so that was, I think, in part a lot of the frustration this season with Kerr's tight leash on Kuminga, on Moody, PBJ. And then obviously the Wiseman situation, we already talked about too much. As far as free agents go, it's a little early to start seeking and seeing that. Do we get a Steph Curry, Warriors discount like we did with Otto Porter, like we did with Dante this season? Because Dante, that's another issue. He's been so good for us. Financially, there's not really a way to keep him unless perhaps Draymond opts out and, there's another move, right? And I'll bring this up. Did you see TK Kawakami released an article on The Athletic in the last day or two, talking about what this postseason run means for the Warriors. And it was the typical financial benefits of all these home games as the playoffs go on and how they need to win to sustain and how expensive this team is to maintain. But I think the eye-opening part of the article was that it wasn't just Draymond that he brought up in the offseason. He said that both Poole and Klay could possibly be shopped if this playoff run isn't long enough, right? He basically said they need to get to the Western Conference Finals to make that money. And then Bob Myers, right? There's so much up in this could be, it could be the wildest offseason of this Warriors dynasty, of this era, right? So it's hard to kind of predict. And I think it's a wait and see approach as far as how successful and how long this playoff run is. Ut Alumbro, aka Nathaniel A., he said, since there's a possibility that Luka might leave, what is your opinion about a Zion for Luka trade? The Pelicans might be tired of Zion always missing games, and Luka might be tired of the Mavericks. Yeah, man. So Colin Cowherd, FS1, right, I like Cowherd, dude. He's really good at what he does. Now, he has to dabble in so many things, and he's a football guy, really. His football takes are legit, I don't usually listen to him about basketball, but he was spot on about his Luka take last week where he said he's kind of turning into Carmelo Anthony, right? Like he can't seem to get in shape. He won't commit to the defensive end. He's kind of prickly and whiny and he gets what he wants. I mean, when you put it that way, right? I think we all agree Luka is a more, I won't say we all do because we got some old heads that are, ride or die. Melo has a cult. Carmelo has a cult, just like young Melo does. But, the consensus is Luka is a more talented player than Carmelo Anthony, right? Because he's the hub. Melo was kind of just but Colin has a point. He does. And at this point, Luka's at a crossroads in his career is what I'm getting at. But no, that's not a swap to me. That's not an even trade, right? And it's interesting. You saw CJ come out after that. That was not the time, in my opinion. CJ, is a very calculated dude, but after he had such a terrible outing in that play-in game, is not the time you call out Zion. And it was directly at him, right? We need to sleep better. We need to eat better. We need to get in shape. And so, I was talking to somebody and they said, is Zion just tanking it out? Is he just purposely doing this to get out of New Orleans? Is what a lot of people think. I don't think Zion would want to be hurt. So no, I don't think it's on purpose, but I think he may be staying out of shape on purpose. Like, like what he say? He said, I don't feel like myself. And then you saw him warming up the other night. He has no lift. It was very obvious that he's like 30 pounds away from being on the court. Doesn't matter now for the Pels. And yeah, look, Mark Cuban is going to hold on to Luke is going to hold on to Luka till the bitter end, right? He going to look like Jeff Van Gundy on Alonzo Mourning's leg, right? He's going to not let Luka out the door. I don't think they're even considering that. But Zion is a different thing here. And I think Zion, yes, it's very much a possibility. I'm just not sure what type of value he holds. I think that they're going to get less than what people would imagine. And it's all relative, right? But how about Miami? How about like Hero, Max Strus, and some draft picks or something like that? Like, right, that sounds like way too little. But then you sit back and look at what Zion has actually proven, right? So I don't know. And are they willing to sell him, piece him out like that and sell low on him? I think they might be more willing to when you look at how many other picks they've hit on. They've got a pretty good roster. Like, obviously, it's not good enough yet, and they've got to reconfigure, but it's not like they're so far away that they need this huge haul. I think it really depends on perhaps the pick and maybe the second tier, third tier star that they would get for him. But I think Zion, could definitely be moved. Luka, you can forget about it. Cuban going to hold on to him till the bitter end. It could get ugly. It could. Still unlabeled. Hypothetical. Klay or Dray has to go. Who do you keep? Who does Steph want? Klay is my favorite player. And those of you that watch my breakdowns and this return and all that, it's been amazing. But there's been times I've been on his neck. Like, he has disappointed me at times, this new version of him, but ultimately he's my favorite player. I think that my heart would be with Klay. You got to keep Klay. It's blasphemous, right? But my head tells me Draymond is harder to replace, right? And the other argument would be Klay's going to age better because he's just a big shooter. Like, Klay, the way he's playing now, it feels like he could do this for another 4 or 5 years, honestly, right? But Draymond is such a unique part of this team, and he's such a unique player. I think that he's harder to replace. So my answer would be you keep Draymond, as much as that hurts me. And I think if you gave Steph truth serum, he would probably say the same thing, right? His heart would be with Klay, but his head would say Draymond. I don't like that hypothetical, bro, but it's a realistic one. I understand that. Hell, they could both be gone, according to Joe Lacob and TK. Dennis KG. Going to be a tough one this year, but what does Steph winning the 5th chip mean for him, legacy-wise? Does his needle move further than last year or stay the same for him? If he wins his 5th. I mean, first and foremost, I think what it would do is it would send bronzexuals into a dark, dark place. Right? No, but that's kind of the thing, right? Is Steph has 4, LeBron has 4. They are the 2 players of this generation. And I think that's the first thing that comes to everyone's mind, right? Is, oh, well, he'd have 1 more than LeBron. And I think it would probably, again, very subjective opinion, would probably solidify him as the GOAT point guard. Now, Magic has 5 as well, and I feel like that's kind of almost the only thing you can hold over Steph when you have the Steph Magic debate. Now, some people are just going to say Magic's charisma and his size and all that, fine, but then you can argue Steph and the game-changing 3-ball, right? So, but I think it solidifies him as the GOAT point guard, and again, it puts him over LeBron for this current generation. But I think that 4 might be the most special. I don't know if you can match the how special that was in that point in time and what that did for his legacy. I don't think to put it to you, I don't know. I don't think it'll do more than what 4 did, but I think it will knock him up another notch, obviously, right? Let's see here. Tune Bucket, Alk. How do you think Wigs looks in this series? I talked a bit about it in the preview, right? I think it'll probably take him about 2 games to get up to speed, right? And you're going to see his timing is off. You can't game speed. You hear that term, right? You can't match it. You can't simulate it. And it doesn't matter how hard of a scrimmage it is. And so he's not going to be up to game speed these first 2 or 3 games. And what you'll probably see is he'll mistime a jump on a rebound. He'll mistime a basket cut. It'll be the timing. He might get in foul trouble because, again, the pace of the game and just catching up to game speed. But when you look at an athlete like Andrew Wiggins, like a true A+ level athlete, it won't take as long as it would some other guys. And then you consider the fact that, as far as we know, he was never injured, right? It's one thing to come back from an injury where you have to re-find your confidence in your body. That doesn't seem to be the case. So I think it won't take long, right? And I think by game 3 back at Chase Center, he should be looking like Andrew Wiggins. And I imagine even that minute cap will come off. They say he's going to come off the bench, right? The first 2 probably in sack. I could see him getting the start game 3 at Chase and just being Wigs. Knock on wood, right? What else we got here? Free samples. Do you think there is a chance Poole learns to play at a consistently high level and can lead the new generation of Warriors. And again, there were several questions like this with pertaining Kuminga and stuff like this, and someone had brought it up, right? They were like, I think Kuminga's the guy. I think Kuminga is the guy moving forward. Now, Poole, Kuminga has some loud plays too, like, right? He is just a nuclear athlete, but Poole is such a flashy player, and he's a guard. He has the ball in his hands more, so you'd assume, yeah, like he's the leader guy. Here's what I'll say about JP. And a lot of people recently had caught feelings that I'm criticizing, right? And that's what I'm going to do, man. Again, if you go to my breakdowns, and some of you don't get the whole pieces. If you just get the YouTube clips, you feel like maybe I'm like switching up. But if you get every game and every breakdown, you see that I'm just telling you what I see along the way. And I've supported Poole from day one. I have. But he's disappointed me this season. And then there's been various reasons about it. But I want to give him credit for his toughness and durability, and it kind of goes overlooked, I think, because one, he's like 23 years old, and then two, he's a smaller player, but he's tough as hell, and his durability and his toughness, I think, are, again, undervalued and one of his better qualities when it comes to leadership, and that's what we're ultimately talking about when you say lead, right? So Poole, he may be the headliner of the future Warriors, right? He might sell the most jerseys, but the leader, the guy that they're going to follow, I feel like it could be Kuminga. But yeah, I want to give him credit for his durability and his toughness. I think that might be his best trait as far as being a leader goes. And, you look at that, his work ethic that we know is well documented, and his talent. Yeah, it's very possible. But I also think it's very possible they move on from him. Did you see there's some footage that came out like 24, 48 hours ago where there was an assistant coaching him yelling at each other on the sidelines in Sacramento. And it just, over and over, I'm starting to notice that he elicits these aggressive responses from people. You know where I'm headed with that, right? But it's not just Draymond. You saw Kerr do it in Cleveland. I've just seen it multiple times going through in my edits and my breakdowns in each game where there's an element of Poole where there might be a burnout factor with his personality and how rambunctious he is. So I think Kuminga's the guy, but Poole can very much be a part of it. But I'll say this. I'm not sure, because there's some people that say, well, he's so young, right? He's going to, the older I get, the more I realize you kind of are who you are. So yes, he's going to mature in certain ways on the court, but I think his rambunctious, in-your-face personality, get the last word in type of personality, that's who he is at his core. That's not going to change whether he's 23 or 30 years old. At Costas 8, out of all the all-star caliber guards 6'2" and under, is there anyone stronger than Steph Curry? Dame, probably, right? Like it's. I think Dame is naturally stronger, right? When you look at his build and his family, right? They're heavier people. And no insult, right? It just is what it is. He has, what do you call it? The mesomorph built. I think that's what it is, right? I get those always confused. He certainly is an ecto, right? So Dame's more naturally a powerful, strong player. But I think Steph has gotten very strong on a basketball court. His functional basketball strength might even be stronger than Dame. And I think that's your point, right? There probably isn't a guard that is, right? But naturally, the only one that would come to my mind is Damian Lillard. Maddie, do you think Moody should be in the playoff rotation? He's looked a lot better these last few games. I do. I think that, he should get the opportunity over Lamb, right? And especially, listen, styles make fights. If we get through this round and you see Memphis, you'll probably see Lamb play over him because of Memphis's size, right? But in this Kings matchup, where it's going to be very perimeter and guard oriented, you imagine Moody gets that nod first. And all I ask is that Kerr remain dynamic. Hey, give JaMychal Green some minutes on Sabonis if there's foul trouble. Let's see what he can do. You can obviously, the fine line, it's not just giving someone an opportunity, it's how much do you give them. And it's walking that fine line of, in hindsight, you look back and you're like, damn, those 6 minutes of Moody in the second quarter killed us. Not saying that it would, but right, it's how much of a rope do you, I hate using that term, but how much how much opportunity do you give him? But to answer your question, yeah, I think Moody deserves the first look over Lamb, specifically in this matchup. But yeah, I think I appreciate y'all with these questions. I don't want this to go too long. So I'll do it again. I'll do it again. I didn't know that there was this much of a want for it. I'll leave you with one here at Brian Vu. How you doing, Alk? I've been missing your life updates lately. You know, I'm kind of a private dude here, but I'll give y'all a little update. I'm about to turn 40 in November, and I am fighting off the dad bod. Like, I refuse to give in. I'm at this point here where, with at least my workout gear, like, I either got to size up or I'm squeezing into it. I'm not going to buy bigger clothes. Like, I got to just get in shape here. It's tough for me during the season. The summer is when I can focus more on working out, but I'm kind of going through that phase of, I'll tell you, it's a lot harder to be motivated when you get up into your late 30s and 40s. It's all relative. I know there's some of you watching this that are like, I wish I was still 40, right? I get it. But I think in your 20s, you have so much ahead of you, and you don't feel like you're your best you yet, right? Like physically. But by the time you get to about 35, you realize like you're not going to ever probably physically be as good as you were, before. And so then it comes a little more hard to be motivated. And I think you have to find more of longevity and health reasons rather than vanity reasons. But I'm fighting that battle, man. And I feel pretty strong. My workout, here's what so I'm about 6'2", 200 pounds. And what my concept is, I 2-plate all my compound lifts. So 2 plates, meaning 225, deadlift, bench, and squat. That's like a safety zone for me where I feel like I'm pushing myself, but it's safe, And then as far as the family goes, my oldest is out in California and she's doing well. She is working for the post office and just got herself a car. And my middle girl she just turned 19 this week and is getting ready to graduate from cosmetology school. And my youngest, who I've told you all about basketball, she's got a tournament tomorrow, and then she's going to Texas next weekend. So she's on a national 17U team, gold. So she's playing against all the top girls in the country. And boy, that's why y'all complaining about these ad reads. That's what I'm trying to pay for right now. And she deserves it. She deserves it because she is. And listen, the AAU and club is a hustle. Don't get it twisted, right? They be selling a lot of dreams to a lot of parents, and that transfer portal has made things very difficult to get offers. But she's on the fringe where she is good enough to where it could happen, right? But she's not a star. She's kind of like Wiggins. She's a guard, but she's super athletic and a really good defender. She can shoot, right? But she's not a alpha, right? There's times where she kind of drifts, but she'll make plays where you're like, oh, whoa, like that was kind of crazy right there. And so we're excited about that. And yeah, that's what's going on with your boy right now. But I appreciate y'all again. I'll do this if there's more need for it. But again, starting Saturday, it's going to be it all matters. It all matters. And we'll have a lot to talk to. We'll have a lot to talk about. And so, I'll be back covering every step of the way on here. And if you want all my breakdowns, if you want immediate breakdowns of every playoff Warrior game, sign up for the Patreon, man. $2 a month. Someone in the comments will tell you, like, it's worth it, dude. It's worth it. I'm putting out way more content than your typical patron who is just offering like little bonus stuff. No, that's the heart of my work, and that's the best way to support me right now. So yeah, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.